We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the three amigos, the perfect way to kickstart your Newcastle United weekend. We, of course, have Brentford at home tomorrow, which we'll be looking ahead to a little bit later. But it's good evening to Steve, to Mitch, and to George. And welcome to you guys out there watching as well. George, I think you're having a few technical issues. It might be worth you rebooting your computer again tonight because you're about 10 or 15 seconds behind us, I think, George. So if you reboot, come back. And we'll let you back in when you are ready, George. I was right. Okay, so yeah, exactly. Okay, we'll bring George back. We'll bring George back in when he's got his technical side of things sorted out. I want to start off with a football-related comment subject because obviously, you know, people in the chat usually take us on different journeys over the course of the next 2 hours. I just want to talk about Callum Wilson, Steve, getting a new contract, an extension to his contract. He's got a 1-year extension, which from my perspective, I think is well deserved, certainly in current form as well. And looking at it from, you know, the club's perspective, it gives them that little bit of breathing space because, as we know, Callum is one of the elder statesmen. He's a blue chip player, still capable of putting the ball in the back of the net, which is the key thing. But it gives them that little bit extra time. I think, you know, obviously we might find that Yankuba Minte is going to be a player who could come and take the Premier League by storm. But we know that trying to find a striker to replace Callum Wilson moving forward is going to be very difficult. So a wise move by Newcastle, I think, to give him a 1-year extension. Didn't get mentioned in the press conference today, which I found strange. I know they probably announced it just after the press conference, but I thought Eddie Howe would have broken the news to the mass media this morning, but he didn't. But it's something I'm very pleased about because at the moment, you know, we need all the good players to commit. Hopefully, Bruno will be next. But what's your views on Wilson getting that extension?
I'm delighted, Steve. Absolutely delighted. For the first reason being that we only have 2 strikers in the club, 2 main strikers anyway, and him and Isak, and both of them can put the ball in the back of the net. And Callum showed towards the end of last season what a talent he is. He's never really let us down. I know he went through that bit of a bad spell, but I think Callum's issues tend to be injury related, but he seems to have got over that. He's had a nice long run in the team without injury since the World Cup, which is good. And I think you're right. He is a blue chip player. He's still obviously part of the England setup. Came on there in the last couple of minutes up in Scotland, and I think that he's one of those players that if you offloaded him to somebody else, then you would regret it in the same way as I think we regretted losing Les Ferdinand, to be perfectly honest. I think it would have been really, really disappointing to see Callum Wilson move on and shine somewhere else. I'm just delighted that he's remaining on Tyneside, and it's well deserved. It's, you know, like, he does know where the back of the net is when he gets a chance, and he showed that, and he's turned into one of those players who I think that got a little bit of stick towards the back end of last season. Well, towards the start of last season when he wasn't scoring and people felt as though he was hanging around just for England place. But no, he came back, and I mean the goals that he scored and the run that he went on shows what a quality player he is. So I'm absolutely delighted, Steve. Delighted for him, delighted for the club, delighted for the fans, delighted for Eddie Howe, because it's one less headache as we're moving towards a European endeavours, hopefully that can carry on way beyond December and into the new year and beyond.
Okay, well, Mitch, just your thoughts on Callum Wilson signing that contract extension.
Only a good thing, isn't it, to secure somebody who's done so much for work, not necessarily in the best of times, and very much always in the, as he's described him, a blue chip player, somebody that's very much part of the squad and an essential part of the squad. And somebody who gets disrespected a lot, I think. I saw an article on the BBC website today talking about strikers and what strikers do outside of scoring goals, but the most important thing is that they do score goals. And putting all these graphs together showing effectively how Haaland's ahead of everybody else, but the next name on that graph all along was Callum Wilson, and yet the article really doesn't mention him at all. It talks about Son, and it talks about what's his name, the guy at Villa who used to be at Brentford, and Wilson doesn't even get a mention in the article, and yet there's one name stands out on those graphs. It's the next one along from Haaland, Callum Wilson, in goals per minute and efficiency of goals per shot on target and all that kind of thing. And I think he's very undervalued, very underrated outside of what we know he brings. And that's before you bring his personality into it. I think he's very much a leader in the dressing room and on the pitch as well. And I think an essential part of taking this squad forward, and I think finding the right succession plan for him is something that should be, I think, addressed in the next window or the window after that, really. Because I think if you look at his goals per minute, he's one of the most efficient strikers in the Premier League, as this article proved, without actually really mentioning his name. It's ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
But it's very typical of the way the BBC reports everything at the minute. They don't want to give us any credit.
I think you're right, Mitch. And I think the other thing is that you mentioned a key word there, his personality. Anyone who listens to his podcast, for example, or saw that little piece in the club documentary that focused in on him and on his personal life, I think you show that he does have a great personality, and sometimes modern day footballers, that's the thing that they lack. That they can score goals or they can put in performances, but stick them in front of a camera or expect them to talk and they just clam up. Callum seems to be the opposite of that. And that's good, because that again it's a sign of maturity, it's a sign of leadership, it's a sign of confidence as well. And his confidence off the pitch as well as on the pitch, then we'll only benefit going forward as well, won't we?
Absolutely. I think he's somebody who very much appreciates where he's come from and where he's gone in his life journey, not just his professional journey. And I think he shows that gratitude in a number of other ways, and is fully prepared to give that back. And they're the kind of people that are priceless in the dressing room.
Absolutely.
I don't think he would see a young player coming through the ranks as a threat to him. I think he would probably want to, A, prove that he was still the best anyway, and B, pass on the benefit of experience and pass on tips and hints and abilities, and would probably work with a young striker. If that striker approached him and said, "Can you show us how you do this? Can you show us how you do that?" I think as a defender, I think he's a horrible player to mark, because he's always smiling in your face and he's a little bit touchy-feely, and he's a touch striker. He wants to know where you are when he's got his hands on you. And I think as a defender, that's horrible to mark. When you then add the fact he's got the finishing ability that he has and the pace, and even in his time with us, he seems to have put. He's put bulk on, but in a good way, and his strength for his size is exceptional, and I think that's why he makes such an effective centre forward. and I think he's horrible from a defender's point of view to mark, but also that personality is so important about what Eddie Howe's building at Newcastle United, about the dressing room and the leadership team and all of those things. So another year, I'm all for it.
Yeah, Mitch is in a bar, Tom Dixon. That's what the background noise is, but he keeps muting himself when he goes off, so that's great. George, I'm not sure if you're with us or not. I can see you. I'm not sure whether your delay is going to be 10, 15 or 20
I am,
seconds.
but am I with you?
Yes, we can just hear you. There's a slight delay.
It's still off.
7 or 8 seconds. Yeah, we can still hear you. You're about 7 or 8 seconds behind. But can I just ask you what you think about Callum Wilson signing a new contract, George?
Great, absolutely great. The lad's got style. He's got pace. Still, for his age, got ambition by the look of it. And the other thing is, and I was thinking with the younger ones, if any youngster wants a hand in terms of being a centre forward or being an attacking man to go to, I suspect he also could have.
George, yeah. George, unfortunately, it's not working. I don't know what's the matter with your internet, George, but we can't hear you, unfortunately. So we're going to have to take you out. Hopefully, the internet will sort itself out. It always seems to happen when it's raining in the northeast, George. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a nightmare. Your internet when the rain comes down. So maybe give it 10 minutes, try again, and pop back on. That would be good to see you, George, because we do like having you on the Amigos. See what happens with it. Unfortunate for us, but there we go. All right, we've covered Callum Wilson. There is another chat ongoing with Barry Hogan. Guys, just my opinion, but I think we shouldn't have signed Barnes and spent the money on another Botman, standard centre-back. We've got enough depth on the wings. Will this come back to haunt us, do you think, with injuries? I don't think so, Barry. Short term. Long term, yes, I agree. We need another centre-half. I think Barnes gives us a different option in the midfield, but it's all about opinions, Barry. It was never a priority, a centre back in this particular window, and the January window isn't too far away. So maybe they will be looking at a centre back or another centre forward in the January window. Who knows? Obviously, the input of money over the last few days, with the Adidas deal, with that one share going for a ridiculous amount of money as well. Season ticket money getting, put in, TV money going in. Newcastle will be in a place to spend in January if needed. So maybe they might look at another centre half. Maybe they might look at another centre forward. Who knows? But what's your opinion on that, Steve? Barry's quite opinionated on this one.
Yeah, I understand exactly where Barry's coming from, because you suddenly look at a gap. You suddenly look at a potential problem area. If Botman's injury had him out for a few weeks, or drifting into a couple of months, then people would immediately say, hang on, we've spent all that money on midfielders. And so like that, Barry's sort of like pushing that line, I think, a little bit. But at the same time, you mentioned there, Steve, you said you didn't think that a central defender was a priority. I don't think there was any quality out there in the window for someone that would have fitted our little block of talent that we're looking to fill. I think yes, this phrase has been coined, hasn't it? Buying for the future, buying for a year's time, you don't buy a 25-year-old for a year's time. That's the first thing I would say. I think we've bought Barnes because we're looking at an alternative style of play. I think we'll see a little bit of flexibility in formation. And we've always got Dan Burn there as a centre-back cover. We've got Lascelles, so there's two that can immediately come in, and we've got young Bailey as well. So potentially 3 central defenders there that could be called upon. I'm not one of these who would suddenly say, "Oh, you play a fullback, a centre back," and that type of thing. But Dan Burn, for me, was a centre half and should remain as a centre half. and that's your cover, if you like. That we'll see, as you suggested, Steve, up until January. Yeah, money will be spent if there's a hole that suddenly needs to be filled. It'll be spent in that particular area, but it's one of those things, isn't it? You spend the money, then you're guaranteed to get an injury somewhere else. If we'd spent it on a centre back, would have been turning around going, "Damn, we should have bought a left winger." We've lost a centre forward and we've lost a left winger, so we should have bought a left winger as cover, because we've been shuffling players around, and that's this type of thing. That's what we might find, Barry, that in 3 weeks or 4 weeks' time, you're actually turning that round on its head, and we're looking at, we should have bought a striker. We should have bought a right back. We should have bought this. We should have bought that. When you're right. It's all about opinions, but let's just hope that it doesn't come back and bite us on the backside.
Okay, Mitch, your thoughts on the centre back argument? Should we have signed a centre back in the summer window?
Are we looking at the situation with a degree of hindsight of what's happened over the first few games? And hindsight makes you genius, doesn't it? Or we're looking at a situation where I think it's fair to say I wasn't impressed with Byrne moving into centre back against Liverpool, and I don't think he covered himself in glory against Brighton either. But if you'd said to me at the start of the season, we've got Sherbottom, Byrne, Lascelles can cover centre back, I would have said that's the most comfortable I felt we had been at centre back for a long time, and we didn't need any more cover yet. And that's the thing, yet. Yes, down the line, the younger developing option to come into that mix on the right hand side, potentially would be Botman's partner for the next 5 years. That would be certainly on my agenda, but I don't think we needed that over the summer. And with what we let go, particularly with St. Maximin going out, I think we did need another option wide, and I think Barnes has proved he can deliver already. So I think, we're looking at this problem now. We realise it's a problem 5 games in, and we've all got a little bit of hindsight. So I think that would be my take on it. Is I was comfortable at the start of the season and at the close of the window with the options we had at centre back. The performances over the last couple of games in particular have led me to believe that perhaps I was wrong. But you know what? It's about opinions, and we're allowed to be wrong as well. But no, I don't see bringing Barnes in as a waste of money at all. In fact, I think as the season goes on, we'll see the value of having him in there. And I think Steve also makes a very interesting point that we have an ability with the players that we have now to play different systems, which we maybe haven't had. And maybe alternate systems is something that Eddie's looking at, because have we been found out a little bit? Is that why, when having been quite so successful in the first part of this season, I guess tomorrow against Brentford we'll find out a little bit, because Thomas Frank is somebody who's very much a student of the game, and somebody who works on plans and set pieces and ways to counteract oppositions as much as anybody. But I do think we are looking at it, like I say, with a little bit of the benefit of hindsight.
Do you think, guys, that I mean, Steve Middlemas put up there about Byrne not having the pace, but do you not think that a lot of that is down to the fact that we've been playing with Botman, who does have pace, and that gives the fullbacks a little bit of time to sort of to adjust to the way he's been. Now they've got to come back, and they've got to be aware that they've got someone alongside them who doesn't have the pace that Botman had, for example. So you've got your midfield then also has to adjust, and you've got to maybe stop those runs from coming in that you would get away with. You would get away with a player coming running one-on-one with Botman because you knew he had the pace. But if you've got Dan Byrne playing centre half, then you should be doing something defensively to eliminate those runs in the first place before Dan Burn then gets exposed on a one-on-one. So it's all about organisation, it's all about planning, and it's all about how the team gels and in terms of that formation and the individuals. And everybody has a responsibility. And as I say, sometimes when you play 27, 28, 30 games with one particular centre-half who has pace, and then all of a sudden he's taken out the equation, it's going to be difficult for the full-backs to adjust. It's going to be difficult for the central midfielders. And let's face it, people have been criticising the central midfield. You know, Joe Linton, Tonoli, and Bruno, they were getting criticism for their performances and the fact that they're not gelling. But let's take into account that for 2 of those games, they had someone who then had to slot into centre-back because of an injury to a teammate, which then means that the whole formation's gone. But they haven't practiced and haven't trained and haven't supported each other in that way during training. So it's how the team adjusts as much as how the individual player adjusts, and that's what coaching's about. That's what the work on the training pitch all the way through the midweek before you come to a game. And that's what they should be learning. That's what they'll be working on. So I don't think it's just a case of identifying one player and saying he hasn't got the pace, so you know everything else turns to crap. I think it's very much a case of, you know, in the round, in the hole. Let's make sure that we're combating our inefficiencies as well as our efficiencies, and we're reacting and building our team accordingly.
Yeah, the thing for me is when you look at somebody like Botman, pace can get you out of trouble when you get yourself into trouble.
Yeah.
And they'll excuse him with the odd mistake. Burn, when I've seen Burn play, particularly with younger players, like for example when we were here in Riyadh, he organised that back four. He had everybody very well organised. And yet that's not what I've seen in the last couple of games. And that organisation can negate the need for pace, because if you've got very good positioning, you don't need the pace. You're in the right place. And so that's the circle I can't square with Dan Burn for me in the last couple of games in particular. It belies what I believed was a strength in his game, and that was his organisational skills and his positional skills. That's why he gets found out with that fullback, because he doesn't have the pace sometimes, in my opinion. But yeah, it's a fair point overall, Stephen. I mean, but it's for me just frustrating that I think we're able to be at a better level than we've shown, and I think everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And that's been the frustration for me.
Yeah, okay. International week, it drags on, lads, doesn't it? Honestly, it's an absolute nightmare for us as football fans, having to, you know, wait until, especially when you've lost a game like we have at Brighton. And I know Eddie Howe was feeling the same frustration as us. But, you know, from our perspective, in England perspective, Jude Bellingham certainly stole the headlines, Steve. And Stephen Kennedy's just saying, how good do the lads think Jude Bellingham is? How big will he become? Do you think he'll ever play with a tune in the future? I mean, we can all dream, can't we? But I mean, I said the other day on the breakfast show that I do on Toon Radio that's the closest I've seen to a Gaza-esque performance for a long, long time in a high-profile game. You know, the Scotland-England game is a high-profile game. He's only 20. He's got the world at his feet. I genuinely think we've probably found the new Gaza. Steve?
Oh, that's interesting you say that, Steve. Very interesting. I'll just hang on that one for a minute. When I watched the game, I thought this was like Zidane, but not a Zidane when he was 20. Zidane when he was 27, 28, who would take the game by the scruff of the neck, who could control the game, who could move the ball around. And then I stepped back and went, Christ, this lad's only 20-year-old. That's when you suddenly go, hang on, the last player who did that, the last player who I thought had that confidence and that ability was in an England shirt, a Paul Gascoigne. And so, yes, you're absolutely spot on, Steve. There's something really special. And these players come around once in a generation, don't they? You know, and in this case, probably once in 2 generations. The kid looks unbelievably good. And I mean, the fact that he was picked up and then moved on at 17-year-old for big money, and he went to Dortmund. And let's face it, he ended up at 19-year-old as captain of Dortmund. That's how much they thought of him. And that takes some doing. That for an Englishman to go to Germany and end up captain of the second best team in Germany shows you what they thought of the guy. And then to get a transfer to Madrid for 100 million. Would he play for Newcastle? I'd love to think that we might be in a position to be buying players like that. But he's at the best club in Europe at the moment, or the second best club if you count Man City in that. And you know, I mean, Madrid is the, you know, for most footballers, that's where they want to end their career. That's where they want to have, at some point, have played. It's where all the South Americans want to go, and this kid's found a path into Madrid. And I think he'd be there for years and years and years. To be perfectly honest, it'll take either a massive amount of homesickness or a huge amount of money to get him out of Madrid. I'd love to think we could get players of that quality, but an outstanding talent. And I suppose the next question in terms of internationals is what is Gareth Southgate going to do with him? That's the worry. Where is England going to go with him? Is he just going to stick him on the right? You know, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, is Gareth Southgate going to have the problem? He could be gone by then. We could be into a new reign. Who knows? But yeah, Bellingham. What's your thoughts on him, Mitch?
Very rare that you come across a footballer who genuinely looks like he can do anything. Who genuinely looks like you could slot him into one of 7 or 8 different positions on the pitch, and he would be comfortable. He has genuine football intelligence. He seems to be a calm and intelligent individual. And he makes very clever football decisions on the pitch. And I think that's the thing you're looking at with him. He's a player who, at his age, genuinely has the world at his feet sitting at Madrid. Could go anywhere, do anything. I think in terms of could he play for us, depends what happens with FFP going forward. For me, if the shackles come off and we're allowed to blow some dough, Newcastle United will be in the mix for any transfer, anywhere, at any time, with the financial weight of the AFL. There's no doubt about that. Even in the scenario with FFP as it stands, if we grow that the way we are, the rate we are, we will be at the kind of territory in 4 to 5 years where we will be involved in any transfer that we damn well want to be. That's reality. That's how it will work. We could argue that it comes at certain costs, but that's an argument. So yes, in the future, that's the kind of transfer we could do. Of course we could. I think very right, Stephen. He has got a degree of steel about him. That's why I say it. You could stick him into a number of different positions on the pitch and go. He would. I don't think he would shirk any responsibility to pull out one challenge. He would just do everything that he could for the team, and he very much comes across as that. And I think that's a very interesting comment, Steve, to compare him to Gaza in terms of that kind of impact. And I think that's probably very telling. I don't think I've looked at it that way myself, but it's certainly a very interesting comparison. And going forward, if he continues on that kind of trajectory, he'll surpass anything and everything that does if he wants. He could do anything he wants. And that's a rare talent, a really rare talent.
Okay, lots of good comments coming in. Keep them coming in for us. I just want to show this message. Now, I got this a while, but it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago when I was on holiday. Message from Mikel Socia Reina. He says, "Hey, mate, I know you're on holiday. Womba Geordie's here." Well, I thought it was more appropriate on the Amigos because I've delayed it so much. He said, "My son, Joe Rayner, on the right, and his mate, who is converted on the left from Perth, Australia, in their man cave. He watches all the games, so they're 8 hours ahead, which isn't easy. His hero is Shearer, We once met at the airport years ago. So, yeah, I'm sure we did. And he also says, tell Amanda to buy Perth Glory. There's loads of people there follow football like crazy, but at school, etc. They reckon over 300,000 Poms live in Western Australia. Thank you for your message. There he is there. Nice to see you. Thanks for sending that. And the pictures that you asked us to show with the photos in the man cave. There we go. It looks quite spacious. Like, I'm loving that retro top, by the way. And there it is, the man cave with the it's got the cave up there in the top left. Pride of the Northeast, Newcastle United. Absolutely fantastic. And another one which I was sent was this one. Was from Guy Carr. He says, I'm in full wind-up mode in the Dominion Republic. I had 2 monks and a scouter. Questioning our finishing position above you lot. It was probably unnecessary. But Guy, hope you're having a good time, mate. Thought I'd give you a shout-out as well on the show. Now, as always, we have plenty to get through on the 3 Amigos. So it is time for the music that you either put your fingers in your ears or you embrace. The day I met, we're asking you to send photographs in of you meeting somebody from Newcastle United, both past or present. Could be a player, could be a manager, could be anybody. But thank you to John Norton for sending in this one. Simon Jordan in the Newcastle top, alongside Stuart Pearce, of course, who used to play for Newcastle United and for England. Jim Waite as well, holding up the end on the left-hand side. But thank you for sending that one in. If you want to get your photograph shown on the 3 Amigos with somebody from Newcastle United, past or present, send them in via the usual channels and we will show them on the show. Now, on the professionals, Mitch had an opportunity to speak about a potential takeover at Everton with Stu. I have seen a few social media posts wanting to know what Steve Hastie's views were on 777. Now, they haven't bought Everton. They have reached an agreement with the major shareholder. One would imagine that it's going to take just as long to sort that takeover out as it did to take ours. We can only dream, can't we? But yes, Steve, this is an interesting development, isn't it? I mean, it's Americans again, but Americans with a little bit of a track record here, not a positive one. We discussed it in a small way last weekend, but now it's becoming a reality. Mashiri's done the thing that some of these egotistical owners do, and that's just make the decision, not tell anybody until the last minute, and leave all the minor shareholders very unhappy. The fans scratching their heads, wondering what on earth is going on, and then quickly scouring the international leagues to look at the other clubs that this 777 own to find out the 3 of the 4 teams are all engrossed in relegation battles in their relative leagues. So this Everton story just seems to go from bad to worse. But what's your views on it, Steve?
Yes, I mean, dear me. You know what? The first thing I would say if Mashiri's selling up would be out the frying pan into fire. An American club that only appeared on the scene in 2016, I believe. Instead of 777, if I was an Everton fan, I'd be looking no further than 666, to be perfectly honest, because you just don't know what's coming over the horizon. It's a club riddled with debt. I mean, let's face it. You're honestly telling me that this American group are immediately going to spend and pay up all that money on the ground, for example, which I think is sitting at something like £700 million, still outstanding on the development of the new Dockland ground that they're building. You know for a fact that it's only a matter of time before the Everton fans start screaming that the man who owned 1%, who seemed to be the devil incarnate, Bill Kenwright, is still there. So that's not going to keep them very happy. Multi-club ownership, that's a big question for the Premier League to sort out when it comes to doing their whatever they want to call it now. They used to call it what was it? Can Newcastle be owned by anybody or somebody? Or was it that there was some phrase like that they came up with, some made up thing, and God knows what they're going to call it now for Everton. But yeah, the fit and proper test is going to be an interesting one that they've got to get by. Will they just drop one of the guys from the organisation who's the head of the organisation? They drop him from the paperwork because he's had a drugs conviction. It was a minor one. It was only trafficking, so nothing to worry about there. God knows what else will come out the woodwork as people start to delve in. We know that you've got reporters like Matt Slater at The Athletic and one or two others who are, they are geared to investigative reporting, and this is bread and butter to them. They're going to be digging a hole so deep it's going to be bigger than that one that was on the beach in Dublin that everybody thought was an asteroid or something, or a meteor that turned out to be a hole dug by a bloke who dropped a stone in it, which I thought was quite amusing on the internet this week. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of twists and turns. I think it's going to come up this. I think the multi-club ownership, MCO as they call it, that's the one I think there's people are going to find fascinating, and it's going to be something that's going to keep people talking about for quite a bit of time, I think, because one of the clubs that 777 own, their supporters are in uproar saying that they haven't invested the money that they promised. Now, if they think that club supporters down in Australia, I think it's Melbourne City or somebody, if they think that they're twisty, Christ almighty, wait till the Evertonians appear on the scene. You want to see twisty? Dear me, there's real twisty down at Everton when it comes to this. I mean, everything that I've got a few friends who are Evertonians, a few of the lads from the food bank that we know, great guys, spent a lot of time with them, talking football, talking politics, talking Everton, talking Bill Kenwright, talking about the shambolic way that the football club's been run. And at the same time, when it came to us, the difference between the way they have been run and we've been run over the last 14 years is chalk and cheese. They've spent money after money after money, pound after pound, ruble after ruble. Wherever the money came from, they spent it on people. Completely the opposite of us, but they've got still the same problems, still the same gripes. They've got the problems of a club not communicating, an owner that doesn't communicate. A situation where they no longer speak through the fans advisory group. They twist the fans advisory group around. They made arrangements for people who were representing fans no longer representing fans because they were saying twisty things about the club that they didn't agree with, so they were banned from it. They've been in a situation for the last 18 months where the chairman and various directors like Graham Sharp, who was a hero at Everton, weren't even coming to the match anymore because fans were arguing and threatening them or allegedly threatening their lives and all sorts. So it's been a mess for an awful long time, and I don't think 777 partners are going to be the panacea that some of it fans think there will be. I think there'll be headaches. Just getting to the point where the club is allowed to be taken over, unless Mashiri's done some sort of backdoor deal with the Premier League. And that wouldn't surprise me, mind, because this leads us into the next part of the joining the circle, if you like. And then what happens to all that debt that they had? What happens to all that money that they spent that they weren't allowed to spend? The massive overspend and the situation that the Premier League's looking at now, is that going to end up like a Chelsea where they're going to get a slap on the wrist because the new owners are going to come in and say, oh, we've spotted what actually happened. This was it. And it wasn't anything to do with us at the time. And, oh, well, there's an £8 million fine. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And it's all forgotten about. Is that the way it's going to go? I suspect, yes. As a non-betting man, I'm not a betting man, but as a non-betting man, I would probably stick 10p in to say, you know what, that's probably what's going to happen. Get your money on it. Load your 10 pences on it, lads, because there's definitely going to be ructions. There's going to be people unhappy. They should have been relegated because of the financial fair play situation. They're not going to be. We're into another season now. This has been going on for 3 seasons. Are we going to end up the situation that we had with West Ham and Sheffield United in the Tevez situation where West Ham had to pay compensation? to Sheffield United because it was deemed that they'd broken the rules. There's an awful lot that's, I think, going to cause more problems for the Premier League because of this, because the Premier League haven't done the work quick enough. They haven't investigated quick enough. They've sat on their hands, waited and probably waiting for a takeover to happen so that they can then turn around and go, well, it's too late now. They did it with Chelsea. They knew what was going on with Chelsea for years and years, let's face it. And now it's gonna come home to roost with Everton, and they're gonna get off with it. It's a mess, and it's a mess of Everton's own making. And if we go back to who the new owners are, I think there'll be stings in the tail all the way along before this one gets ratified.
Okay, I mean, Mitch, a couple of days have passed since we did the professional show. We're back again on Sunday at 6 o'clock. But what's your thoughts on the fact that Mashiri's now, confirmed what we suspected would happen? And how do you see it playing out? Do you agree with Steve?
Yeah, I mean, Steve and I have been discussing this stuff for a couple of weeks actually. Sort of seeing this on the horizon. That's what I was pulling Stu's leg about during the professionals, because he's on a WhatsApp group with me and Steve. And I think we've chewed his ear off about 777 over the last 2 weeks. They are an absolute nightmare as an owner. Any group that views fans of a football club as something that is asking to be monetized, it tells you everything. That was the quote that absolutely scared the pants off me. If it was my club, I'd want them nowhere near. A good friend of mine out here who's an Everton fan who runs the Petite Bells bar in Water City, John sent me a little video of Homer Simpson talking to Bart Simpson, and Bart saying, "This is the worst day of my life." And Homer says, No, it's the worst day of your life so far. And he says, "This is what I feel like." He says, I'm just waiting for how badly this can go wrong. And I think it really is on a number of fronts as well. And you touch on the Premier League's inability to act prudently and timely with regards to Everton's FFP indiscretions. They suddenly went from working with Everton to find a solution to referring to an independent commission, probably because they wanted to impose sanctions that were beyond what they'd ever done before, and they wanted to make sure that their own rules were watertight to do that. Now, where this goes from here, you're quite right, Steve. Does this become like Todd Bowley going, "Oh, well, the bad Russian man did this"? Are they going to open the books and go to the Premier League? Well, the bad Iranian man with the Russian friend, he did all of this. It's nothing to do with us. You're right about the stadium. I believe the stadium at the minute is currently 190 million overpitched and rising. Where's that black hole being filled in from? Because that was originally Usmanov's money that had to be taken out of the account because of the direct link to Usmanov. There's so many potential complicated wheels within wheels going forward, and bear in mind the Premier League haven't passed this yet. Mashiri's now just basically dropped the mic and walked off, and said, "Right, over to them." So if this drags on for them and goes through to say the January window, will it be money for them?
And it's another American owners as well.
Well, another American owners and another American owners who have openly said, like MSD did and do, they take positions and give loans to clubs in distress with the one desire that that club defaults on the loan and they end up owning the club on the cheap.
Yep.
And that's what MSD want to do, and it's certainly what 777 have done. I think they do that with Standard Liège.
Yep.
Amongst other things, and it's quite clear to see Seville. Who did it own in it? Genoa.
I'm not sure who they own in Italy, but they own Melbourne City in Australia. and the fans are up in arms there. Standard Liège fans are protesting. Everton fans are your perennial protesters now. I mean, they are top of the league for protesting.
If you look at 777's own words, you know that what they want to do is move players between their own clubs and swap assets between the clubs, effectively to make sure the books balance and do it all without putting their own money in. Everything that they'll do will be done on the cheap. It'll be done on the tick. And I think their FFP just stands to get worse and worse, not better, unless they can cut the deal with the Premier League, which, frankly, this is a problem that I think the Premier League will hope just disappears, and so I think they'll cut any kind of deal they damn well can. I have zero faith in the Premier League being able to manage and govern anything financially within the Premier League to any degree of credibility or properness because of everything else that William has gone on behind the scenes with God now. Will 777 breeze through the O&D test? Yeah, probably. If they got relegated, they'd probably have it done even quicker. I think the Football League would probably have the papers already signed and stamped for them. They seem to let any cowboy get hold of a football club and they don't care. But when it gets to this level, it really is quite serious. But fans of Everton, if I was a fan of Everton, I would be exceptionally the 777 being anywhere near the club. They've openly come out that what they see is they want to sell, again, their quote. It's not just about selling beers and hot dogs to fans. We want to sell them financial products, travel products, and everything else from our portfolio because, quote unquote, they're like a football clubs mean they are there to be monetized.
Yeah. The other aspect of this, guys, as well, is that it's a slightly different multi-club ownership model in structure to the one that I have at Man City, which is structured completely differently. Each club operating independently with a totally different board above it and beyond it that has to do with the parent company, if you like. I think what you've got here is the potential for 777 and the owners, to drive and coach your horses through the rule book of FIFA in terms of being able to take players from other clubs. It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts on Newcastle United because let's face it, we are being hamstrung by some amazing new sets of rules that have come into place just since our takeover that have, like, for example, other people deciding that Alan St. Maximum's worth 25 million quid when, you know, a vast majority of us thought that were being undersold there. But you could be in a situation where you could, for example, with this lot, start selling players between their own clubs at extorted prices. Just to alter the FFP, just to move it around. We're getting stifled on one situation, but this could drive a coach and horses through the rule book, and it could be an absolute nightmare for UEFA and for FIFA.
Or we need to see the same level of interest in who decides what's fair value for a transfer or for a sponsorship. We need to see that what is being applied to us is being applied to other people as well.
Yeah.
You've also got other levels of interest in multi-club ownership going on around the world. The Asian Football Conference is now being lobbied by certain parts of the Asian Football Conference members because of PIF owning multiple clubs in Saudi. Apparently that technically breaks the rules of the Asian Football Conference. And the Asian Football Conference are just looking the other way because money and what the kudos of having some of those players playing, for example, the Asian Champions League, which they want to monetize more and get more global interest in. And so the Asian Football Conference is in a bit of a bind because they want to have Ronaldo playing against, Neymar in the semi-finals of the Asian Champions League. However, apparently there are some Asian members are saying that if you go to the small print of the Asian Football Conference rules, that multi-club ownership is not allowed, and we've just allowed it to happen in Saudi, and so what are you going to do about it? And so there's all sorts of things going on with world football at the minute that my personal feeling is Newcastle will benefit from all this, because it'll blow the shackles off everything. It will turn into a free-for-all. And when it turns into a free-for-all, we'd be one of the major benefits.
I'm just laughing at Bill here. Change the subject, so look, it's not about bloody tickets. I love it, Bill.
Yeah.
Straight to the point, lads. Straight to the
Well.
point. Okay, look, plenty of questions coming in, but we did have to touch on that because Steve didn't get the opportunity tonight, and it's one that'll run and run. And the reason we talk about Everton's takeover, as we have about other takeovers, is very simple. Look at what happened to our takeover. Yes, it eventually went through, but it's, as Mitch says, as he finished off nicely there, it's how we're going to benefit if one of these takeovers goes through in a certain way, or whoever takes it over. It is interesting. We do like to keep our finger on the pulse with regards to that. I want to move on to Nick Pope, and it was something that it was asked of Eddie Howe in the press conference today. Nick Pope, of course, he's going to be disappointed with the last few games. And it was Matthew Raisbeck from BBC Radio Newcastle who, after asking about players who were injured and who was possibly going to be available for the game tomorrow, asked what his thoughts were on Nick Pope. He said he's had a bit of criticism after the game against Brighton, especially for the first and the second goals. What was his view on him? He was fishing a little bit. Is he going to back his keeper? Is he going to have confidence in him? Well, of course he is. Eddie's reaction was as you would have expected. He said he hadn't seen the comments. Nick's a top goalkeeper. Last season, he was immense for us. He was part of the very successful back four that, kept a low record, kept the most amount of clean sheets. But he says when you're a goalkeeper, and the goals go in, you're judged on those goals that go in. It's as simple as that. But he backed him, which we didn't expect anything different. But just thoughts on Nick Pope. I mean, it's been a tough start for everybody, Steve, hasn't it? I think it's a bit unfair for the media to pick Nick Pope out.
Yeah, but they are going to pick him out because we've been conceding goals and he's the goalkeeper, so that's why they've done it. Had an injury, broke his finger, didn't he? Was out.
Yeah.
So he's had to recover from that, which means that's had an impact on what he's been able to do work-wise during the close season, and then in training after that as we're preparing for the start of the season. Changes in back four, changes in midfield. Like I said earlier, you make slight alterations to the way you're playing, the pace that the game's being played. And then, a couple of errors. Name a goalkeeper that hasn't made errors. And I think you'd have a very, very short list, wouldn't you? Let's face it. No, I don't think there's any problem. I think the goalkeepers are a different breed, aren't they? That's the phrase that's always used when it comes to goalkeepers. They know their own mind. They know when they're playing badly. You very rarely get a centre half who knows he's playing badly, or a centre forward because they don't want to be dropped. But a goalkeeper goes through this agonising analysis of himself and his performance, and he has his own coach who goes through the mill with him, and he has a teammate there who's there to encourage him, but at the same time is desperate to take his place. It's an unusual relationship that goalkeepers have, and an unusual little setup within a squad. But as said there, his high standards that he set last season haven't been shown yet, and it's something that I'm sure he's working on. But I don't, for the life of me, think that his place is anywhere in jeopardy. Far from it. I think Eddie Howe bought him for a particular reason, because he thinks he's a quality goalkeeper. I think we're also looking at it from the aspect of, and again, probably unfair criticism, not being part of the England setup. When a goalkeeper gets dropped from the England setup, it tends to be, all hell let loose. He's obviously crap, but it's not necessarily that. It's just, opportunities, because you'd go down for England and you wouldn't have played anyway. You'd have maybe got half a game if you're lucky. Even if it's a friendly, it's a strange setup that England have when it comes to goalkeepers. Always has been, when it was Shilton and Clemens, when they used to swap over, no matter who was better, no matter who's on form, it would be one in, one out, one in, one out for a long period of time during the 80s and 90s. But no, it's I think you stick with Nick Pope. You have faith in Nick Pope. He's a good goalkeeper. He hasn't let us down, and he'll come good, and we'll go on a run. And the back four come good, and they'll go on a run, and they'll stop conceding goals, and we'll get that reward. And we'll all be happy again, Steve.
Nick Pope, getting a bit of criticism, getting a bit of stick, but that's always the case with goalkeepers, Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's that weight on the position where a mistake usually leads to a goal. You don't have somebody else there to get you out of trouble. He has set a very high standard and high bar for himself over the last year. Is he hitting that same level? Probably not. Did he exceed the level that I thought he would get to? Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, I'm more concerned that he seems to lack confidence with his feet. That seems to be something that I see in him, that, you know, he seems to be either rushing to get the ball away from his feet, or his decision making sometimes with his feet isn't as positive as it is in other areas of his game. I don't know what's brought that around. I don't know what's been the instigation of that. How much of that goes back to that sending off against Liverpool last season, and how much did his confidence get a knock there? Don't know. I think all goalkeepers seem to, like, you're quite right, Steve, they're a very different breed, and they go through with their very different experience as part of the squad. I think they all do seem to, or many do seem to dwell on things. I remember being behind the goal, I think it was at Blackburn one season when Steve Harper made a couple of ricks, and he was muttering to himself all the way through the second half. And it was doom and gloom and all sorts. And I think they do take things to heart very hard. But when you set yourself such a high bar, it's always going to be difficult to keep hitting that mark. I think, you know, like I say, is he an upgrade on everything else we've had over the last few years? Yes, it is, in my opinion. And has he exceeded what I thought he would do when he came in by an absolute man? And I think also don't underestimate the effect hand surgery can have on people. Not just in terms of, yes, he's a goalkeeper, and the hands are very much part of the game, but hand surgery is complex and super specialist. And coming back 100% from that probably takes a lot of rehab and physio, and he may still be going through some of that. And so there's a number of reasons why he might not be firing on all cylinders as such. But again, when we started the show talking about personalities in the dressing room, he seems to be somebody that everybody loves to be around and have around. And everybody in the dressing room seems to back him to the hilt, which is, you cannot ask for more than that. And I'm quite sure he'll save for more points than it cost over the course of the season. I was delighted when he had his little redemption movement in the game against Leicester that time. So we clinched for Champions League spot. That save he made late on that game was world class. It was just good. It was superb. And so he's got all of that in him still, and I don't think the entire squad has showed me what they've got this season so far to the max. Even in the opening game against Villa, they came away with a result, but it wasn't 90 minutes of firing on all cylinders. And so I think sit tight and be patient and keep the heart with everything, and we'll see the best Nick Pope again very soon.
Yeah, let's not forget as well, guys, that rick that he had at Liverpool cost him a cup final place. And we're talking about confidence, and we're talking about disappointment, and we're talking about the mental aptitude that the player has. You know, so he got the double whammy, didn't he? You know, he got the suspension. Well, the triple whammy if you consider the mistake, which would have really got to him. You know, the fact that the mistake was so blatant, then to be suspended for the cup final, and then to come back and obviously he'd missed the cup final, and to come back and sort of redeem himself, if you like, later on in the season. But that was hard for him, I think, as well. And we forget the mental aptitude, as you say. But you look at other goalkeepers, and over the years, some of the goalkeepers have had. Most goalkeepers have had a rick in them. Pav had a rick in him. No question about that. Shea Given towards the end. Shea kept us in so many games, but so many people would criticise him because they used to say he wasn't very good at crosses and stuff like that. You mentioned Harps, but I mean the one goalkeeper who psychologically everything that he did during the game got to him was obviously your pal Budgie Burridge, who, let's face it, there was no more crazier guy in goal than him. And I suppose if we want to talk about goalkeepers, and we want to, maybe if we're gonna analyze, because we're not goalkeepers, and we want to analyze that, we need to hear from somebody like him to find out exactly what's going through a goalkeeper's mind, especially now when a goalkeeper has to use his feet all the time, or as regularly as he's using his hands. And I wonder how Budgie would have got on if he was using his feet as well as his hands during a game. I think he used his fists a few times, but with opposition and with his own teammates. But I wonder how he got on using his feet.
Okay, we're halfway through the show. Time for the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's, sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm, and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours, and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video, and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com.
Okay, as always, plenty to get through on the three amigos, and it is time for Tweet of the Week. A good mixed bag this week, and this one was for you and Stu, Mitch. I know I swear a lot, beer.
Should be putting that to the test. The night is over here at the minute.
Yeah, good stuff.
This weekend should be mental, actually. We've got people over. Stu's over from Bahrain. We've got guys coming up from Abu Dhabi, guys coming down from or something like that. All for this weekend for no apparent reason other than it's the weekend. And so everybody's assembling a group and bar for the match tomorrow, so it should be a little bit messy.
Excellent. Okay, Stephen Kennedy sent us a few this week. Bless her. My wife is knitting me a woolly warmer. She said it won't be long. Very good, Stephen. Very good.
Very good, Stephen.
And I can't unsee Captain Tiny Arm and his baby sidekick, Mega Hand.
That's brilliant, that.
Excellent. I love photos like that. Thank you for sending that, Stephen. And this one, hey, I was watching that. I think we've all been there.
Yeah. Usually on a Saturday night after the match.
Mum, please tell me I take after your side of the family, says the boy to his mum as his dad gets ready to make a fatal error. And our marriage is like this deck of cards. All we needed were 2 hearts and a diamond. Yeah, that was then, sweetie. Now I wish I had a club and a spade. Harsh. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. Thank you, Stephen, again for that one. And 2 dung beetles meet in a bar. One says to the other, "Excuse me, is this stool taken?"
Oh,
That was from Dunnell. Thank you, Dunnell. He sends a few of them in each week. The linesman drank Red Bull before the game. That's happened a few times this season, hasn't it? And when you're down by the sea and an eel bites your knee, that's amore.
oh. He loves getting you singing, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he, Ian? And I thought monkeypox was a hoax. Then I saw her face. Now I'm a believer. Thank you, Stephen. Brilliant.
Getting you around little section soon.
I feel bad for parents nowadays. You have to explain the birds and the bees, the bees and the bees, the birds and the birds that used to be bees, the bees that used to be birds, the birds that look like bees, and the bees that look like birds but still got a stinger. Very good, that. Very, very good, that. This one was from Dougie. Thanks, Dougie. He says, what was that one? Think about a divorce. Think about it. A divorce costs more. He says, that's brilliant, by the way. Yeah, because obviously, like it's a big advert, and obviously somebody who's going to get married sees that before they go in. Fantastic. The Great North Run give the Sunderland fans a chance to show off while they are the biggest supporters in the Northeast. And he did happen to mention them in the press conference today. And never let an elbow ruin your photos. Excellent. Another good example. A swarm of 20,000 bees once followed a car for 2 days because their queen was inside the car. Xavier asking the important question. Sorry to ask, but who counted the bees?
Very good.
And I feel another song coming on. Knock, knock. Who's there? Agad. Agad who? Push pineapple, shake the tree. Prison escape was big news this week. There it is, Bid Food. Fantastic takeaway service. 5 stars from me.
I don't know whether you saw it, Steve, but when they were driving him into court, I think it was on Monday, that van was driving past in front of the police van that took him. What was the chances of that?
Couldn't have scripted that. Like,
what?
Good advertising. Matthew Stanger, this is great. My sister went to a 40th birthday party last night with a Blackburn Rovers cake, which was clearly made by a Burnley fan who put claret and blue icing in the middle. Absolute brilliant. Classic. And this one, most people have heard of Karl Marx, of course, the philosopher, but few know of his sister Anya, the Olympic runner. Her name is still mentioned at the start of every race. On your marks, get set, go. Very good. Paul McCartney disqualified from the London Marathon. His agent told the Daily Dafty he's banned on the run. And this one, we asked 100 people to name an item of school uniform. You said hard hat. Our survey said, and I thought the limit was 2. Day 39 on the arc. A few rabbits have been going forth and multiplying. As a kid, did you ever knock on people's doors and run away before they answered? Well, guess what? They're now hiring. And this is good as well. Thanks, Mike. I was high last night and realized something. If you turn Donald Duck's head upside down, it becomes Donald Trump.
Brilliant.
Mum, leave the darn sign in the kitchen where it belongs. Life is short, lick the bowl. And relax, says Terry. It's only a plum. Too extreme for tweet of the week. No, it wasn't, mate, because it is a plum. And the Pope finds out Boys to Men is not a delivery service. I was near the bone, that one. Jim Morrison's van and Van Morrison's gym. Very good. I did like that one. And testicular injuries in women's sport have increased, as you can see, from 1990 to 2025. And if there is a fire, what steps would you take? Asks the teacher. Effing big ones, says the kid. You go for that, boy.
Well,
And all I want for Christmas is my dog to carry his bone correctly. Tweet of the week from Jimmy. This couple went to the gym together for 6 months. Xavier's back in with, did the guy wait outside? I like Xavier. When you've only been at your job for 2 weeks and already have a reputation.
oh, dear me.
And Scotland get battered everywhere they go. Stu Penman replies, is your real name Scotland?
That's our Stu.
Very good, son. Do you want a box for your leftovers? Nah, I hate violence. You can have them. Excellent, Ian. My type, that. I love it. Daft photo for Friday's Amigos. Of course, another one of those quiz games. Ravi went out, but Oli was still in. Ravioli. Brilliant. And Jesus Christ was originally going to be named Gary until Mary stubbed her toe.
That looks like Uncle Mitch Mary stubbed her toe. that was
from Zara, one of a few from Zara. Sylvester Stallone.
Very good.
Could have been a lookalike, that. Very good. And in 2060, Southgate's still England manager, and you guessed it, Maguire and Henderson are still starting. Another one from Zora. As is this one. Stumbled upon a man having a pee in the alley, and I'm the one apologized, putting the shame into Ben's shame. Last few. A long time ago, we had empires run by emperors. Then we had kingdoms run by kings. Now we have countries.
Yes.
Very good. And trespassers will be headbutted. That was a sign in Scotland. And this post has been removed because it might cause offence.
Oh, very.
Top 3. I don't really like Indian food. I prefer English food like pizza or Chinese. Jamie Vardy. Number 2, we all can agree with this. Prime for older ravers. WD-40 in a can. Mitch will need that after his weekend this weekend. And coming in at number 1, it's not just me, is it?
No, it's not.
Very good. Keep them coming. Zara, Stephen, Ian, Jimmy, Jim, everybody who's submitted them this week, been some absolute belters. Keep them coming in. Please keep sending them to us, and we will feature them next week on Tweet of the Week. Okay, lots of football questions coming up, but I do want to ask this one from Alan. He says, lads, question, are we worried that there's no sign of the ground being expanded or the training complex being built? Are we already standing still? It's been 2 years now. I'll answer it, and I don't think this is a long answer, really. Not at all, because they've got to go through the same motions as everybody else. Planning permission, got to go through surveys, especially with the ground. It's not something that can be done overnight. We need that sorted out, and I think the training ground, etc. Again, will all come to. It'll all come out at some point, won't it? It will come into place, but we can't just do everything. Investment in the playing squad was first and foremost. Sprucing up the ground as best we can, improving the financial fair play, and then the rest will come, Steve, surely.
Yeah, when they've got the designs ready for the training ground and when they've got the plan application ready to go, that's when we'll find out. But there's an awful lot. I mean, you've got to remember what they're looking to build is going to be a training ground that's going to be part of the football club establishment for the next 50, 60, 70 years. They've got to get it right. Both location-wise and facility-wise. It's a massive investment. There's so many new features and new design features that can be incorporated that they possibly never considered. They'll be traveling around the world. They'll have a team traveling around the world looking at training complexes. Some of the finest training complexes you can ever imagine. The Middle East training complexes that we know of in Riyadh, for example, and in Jeddah, some of the ones in Doha, and then obviously you look to America and you look at training complexes that they have in the NFL. So that there's an awful lot of work to be done, just to make sure that what we get is going to be, the top of the top, because that's what they'll be looking for. And then when you look at the ground itself, I think there's a couple of issues that you have. Obviously, one is what to do with the East Stand. The second one, obviously, is the Gallagher end. It's interesting that the stack application that's in at the moment, that's only going to stretch us till, I think it's the end of 2025, possibly into 2026. It tells you that that's just temporary. It tells you that it's given them then the opportunity to do something and to plan ahead. And while that's in operation, and from what I can gather, the club doesn't see that area where the stack area is going to be on the car park. They don't see it as a money-making venture. It's not there for that. It's not going to be some sort of panacea that's going to bring millions and millions of pounds in. It's purely going to be somewhere where supporters can meet, entertainment can be put on a match day, something different to what's going to be offered in the rest of the city centre. But it's not a permanent feature. It's temporary, and during that time they'll be looking to decide what to do with that plot of land, and how they can incorporate it, if possible, into the redevelopment of the Gallagher end. We've mentioned the Leazes end, the East Stand in passing, in our little conversations a couple of times. We're being a bit mischievous. One of the suggestions we made, were they looking at the East Stand because it's wrapped concrete, for example. That was immediately the flavour, the topic of the month a couple of weeks ago, before the schools went back. But on a serious note, I mean that stand's been up for nigh on 60 years now, coming up. It was started at the back end of 1970, I think, wasn't it? So it's 50 odd years at least. And it's made out of concrete, reinforced. I don't know what the life of concrete is. I was talking to Bill Corcoran today about it, and Bill said, well, the Romans used concrete that's lasted 1,000 years. He goes, yeah, but they knew how to make concrete. By the 70s, we'd forgotten how to make concrete. I think that it's quite possible that that they're looking at the East Stand simply because of what it's manufactured from. But that site will take an awful lot of clearing as well, and I think that all comes into the bigger round of what they're going to do stadium wise, full stop. So a lot of little wheels within wheels are spinning at the moment, but we'll find out in good time about the training ground. As I say, I don't expect them to make an announcement until they've studied everything that can be for an absolute state-of-the-art training complex, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, Mitch, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not panicking. If you look at the way they're having to do things, everything's either temporary or interim, isn't it? Temporary fan zone and interim training ground redevelopment. And that's what they've had to work on first. I think the other thing as well, what having to battle is having rules change on constantly. So some things that didn't used to be under FFP suddenly are miraculously under FFP again now. And it all has to be factored in going forward, that we don't trip ourselves up and make a mistake in terms of that. So it all needs to be thought through, and that all takes time. We know there's problems with potential developments both at the Gallagher end and in the Leazes Stand. And the Leazes Terrace with Leazes Stand. And so all of these things, there's no overnight solution. Yes, we've chewed the fat. I've got pals who are architects who've done stuff for me, all of which started in a conversation in a pub with a beer mat and a pen, and going forward from there. The real I am takes a lot more than that, and takes time. So I think I'm not overly concerned. The fact that they're doing things like looking at the fan zone, which they still keep referring to as an interim temporary solution, would suggest that their ideas are doing something more with the whole plots and James's and surrounding areas going forward. But it ain't going to happen overnight, that's for pretty sure. And in the meantime, we'll progress at where we can on the pitch and use FFP to our advantage where we can to develop in every single possible way. And the more successful we are on the pitch, the more we are going to be able to furnish the nice things off the pitch. So just one step at a time. It's all part of that grander plan that we're still really ahead of the curve on.
Yeah, don't panic is the message from us. Certainly, East Stand is knackered. Yeah, I mean, from inside, it'll be condemned in a few years, says Nicholas. Yeah, we do care about the ground. We do want it to be better, but it will take time. That is the issue. Krista Johnson says, "Come on, Eddie, take a chance like Klopp in 2011, 2012 with youngsters like Lewis Hall, Elliot Anderson, Murphy, and Livramento and Miley. We've absolutely nothing to lose." And Eamon asks, lads, do you think Lewis Hall will make his debut tomorrow? So it's interesting, this, and I'll tie this in with the whole left back question that was asked at the press conference today, Steve. It was asked of Eddie, do you think you'll ever see the day where you could play Kieran Trippier at left back? And he said, look, we look at every potential option. He's clearly capable of playing that position. He showed that at international level. We always keep our options open, but we've just signed young Lewis Hall, who is much revered at Chelsea. A lot of their fans didn't want him to leave. Yes, he's a young lad, but looks, in all intents and purposes, and what I've seen, as somebody who could come in and do a job immediately in the Premier League. So, is it time maybe to give Lewis Hall a chance, or would you consider unbalancing the team, sticking Trippier on the left back and giving Livramento a chance at right back?
As few changes as possible would always be my mantra when it comes to defence. Shuffling people across and to accommodate somebody else, I think, can often turn into a recipe for disaster. Lewis Hall, I suppose a lot of it will boil down to how he's doing in training. Having said that, that seems to be the flavour of the month at the moment, isn't it? With managers, players not performing in training and then you bomb them out. But seriously, I mean, the lad's only been here a couple of weeks, but we know that he's got wonderful potential. Played a lot of money for him. His time will come. The question is, having witnessed the performance of Matt Targett the previous week, would you now consider him to be ahead of Matt Targett in your thinking? And I suppose that's the one that Eddie has to juggle. That's the coin that he has to spin. I mean, there was talk of just towards the end of the transfer window that Matt Targett wanted away. He was wanting football, permanent opportunity. He was possibly getting a bit sick of always being on the bench. But a lot of that was down to the fact that he was out for a long time injured. And then when he came back, he couldn't dislodge Dan Burn. This is what Lewis Hall has to do, is show that he can dislodge both Dan Burn and Matt Targett for the left back post if he wants to make it his own. Livramento, his time will come. I think having seen Livramento when he came on a couple of weeks ago, I thought it was a bit rabbit in the headlights type of 10 minutes cameo from him. I thought I didn't understand why they threw him in the way that he did. It didn't really seem to have any rhyme or reason to it other than giving him a run out. Whether I think his task is going to be harder to dislodge Trippier than Lewis Hall's task will be to dislodge either Dan Burn or Matt Targett at left back. But time will tell. Tomorrow might be a good game to put Hall in. Might be just what we need. Freshened up a little bit. Excuse me. Shows Eddie isn't frightened to make changes. There's been a big clamour for him to make changes. But he is a manager who's quite loyal. I suppose much as well depends on in terms of formation, and we'll probably come to that on who comes back fit and who's still injured from international duty, who's suffering from jet lag after long journeys, who's played and is struggling. It sounded in the press conference like everybody was okay, other than Tonali, who we're now waiting for the signs from. I personally suspect that Tonali will be rested and given an extra few days before we'll then face his old club in the Champions League. But maybe tomorrow is the game for Hall to come in.
Time to give Lewis Hall a run out, Mitch.
Don't see what we've got to lose by. If he's ready, for me, if Potman's back, it should be I think if that's the way forward, if that's how he sees the lineup of the back four going forward, I don't get the whole Trippier at left fullback thing, not helped by Southgate doing it through the week. He frustrated me at left fullback as much as Almiron sometimes frustrates me on the right. When you've got a player effectively on the wrong side and he wants to come in constantly to use his favoured foot, that gives a weakness that oppositions can exploit, and I don't get the thought of Trippier at left fullback on a regular basis. In an emergency, yes, but when you've got three left-footed players who can play a fullback there, you pick the best one, and on the basis of the last couple of games, neither Burn nor Target covered themselves in glory, and if Hall's ready to go and he's up to speed, why not? We've invested in him for the future, but he's also shown in the performances he's made for Chelsea that he's ready for the now as well. And if you're good enough, you're old enough to take age out of the equation. I think also, do we see a change in formation coming, or do we see a change in the way the team works? Again, as Steve rightly says, depending on who's come back fully fit and who hasn't, who's jet lagged or might not be, etc., etc. I think we've got some really important team-based decisions to make on players, and left back's most definitely one of them for me. But I don't see what we've got to lose by chucking Hall in now. He's been at the club long enough. He should hopefully be up to speed with everything. And I don't see what he can't offer that Target or Burn offer at left fullback.
Yeah. The other aspect of this as well, guys, is that they say put him in tomorrow. Brighton are quite a direct team. Brentford rather are quite a direct team when it comes. They do tend to sometimes play a bit of a counter-attacking game, but last week they were very much the offensive team when they played Bournemouth. They really went at it, and they've got pace across that front line even without Ivan Toney. So it's going to be one of those games where you're going to be looking for players with a little bit of pace to counteract them, and this is what's fascinating. Do you match pace for pace, attacking wise, or do you match pace for pace defensively? So you stick someone in who's got pace going forward, or who can get back quick. I think it's going to be one of those games tomorrow. I think it's going to be fast and free flowing. It's going to be very, very interesting, and that it could well be that it's a perfect game for Lewis Hall to come into. And I think he's one of those lads who, if he got a start, he could suddenly find that he can hold his place in the team, because that's the challenge for him. That's a challenge for everyone who gets an opportunity with Newcastle now, and it'll be the same. The question was asked on the line there about Elliot Anderson and whether it was the right time to give him a shot, and he should be looking well. Once you get your opportunity, you've got to be ready and you've got to be prepared to be able to hold it and take it. I suppose the Anderson problem is that he didn't perform for Scotland because he was struggling apparently with an injury, and it's a case of whether he'd be risked. But what you wouldn't want from an Elliot Anderson would be for it to be thrown in, thinking he has an opportunity, and then pulls up with an injury that knocks him back for 4 or 5 weeks, and before you know it, it's Christmas time before he then gets back. So time is of the essence with some of these young lads sometimes, but it's also they've got to be a bit patient. And I think as long as they're ready in training and they're ready to step in, and they've got the confidence to say, right, now I've got the shirt, I'm going to keep the shirt. That's what Eddie Howe will be looking for from them, And that's what, if I was a manager in Eddie Howe's position, that's what would probably keep us awake at night on the plus side rather than the negative side, because I'd feel as though I had a squad of players who were desperate to play for Newcastle United. And I bought them for that purpose, and I'm seeing it from that purpose as well. So all positive from us.
Yeah, all positive. Okay, 30 minutes to go. Time for Tune Lookalike. Okay, Jacob, get on with the late one. Let's all pray with Reverend Hasty, he says, for Newcastle this weekend, and so say all of us, mate, and so say all of us. John Joe Shelby is off to Turkey. It hasn't gone unnoticed by Ian Windsor. He says this is him after his season-long loan in Turkey. I had numerous pictures like that. Yeah. There's a couple more Hasties chucked in. This one from Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Very, very dapper there, Steve, on your perch.
Yep. Would you?
And this one from Steve, having a good time on the beach. Bless her. Get some stick, Daniel.
Oh, he used to go to Turkey for teeth as well.
Jacob as well. Seen Hasty and one of Adam videos this week.
Wow. Cheers, Adam.
There you are.
Quiet.
Just having a little peep there. Alan McKenzie, Friday night lookalike. Pauline from the League of Gentlemen and Carol Malone. Very good. Did like that one. This one from Stu Penman, John Parrott and Chippers. This is the problem, Chippers. Now that you're part of the fans forum, you're a target for Stu. Rita says Ali McCoist and Jim Kerr.
Yeah, both alive and kicking.
Both alive and kicking. Very good, Steve. I like that. Look alike for Mr. Steve Hasty, writer and producer James Jude Forbes.
That's a new one.
Yeah, but at least it's a bloke. At least it's an actual person. Jimmy Moore, Simon Bar Sinister, and Rudy Giuliani from Jimmy.
That's good, Jimmy, that.
And this one, the former Chelsea manager, Andrea Villas-Boas and Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
That one's from Tom. And another one from Rita, the longest escaped terrorist, and Tino.
Poor lad.
Sure, Tino will be over the moon with that.
I bet.
And this one was Mitch. Apparently, it was a video though, so I had to screenshot it. And see the likeness there. Admiral Akbar and Marlon Harewood from Tom Dixon. Sure, Marlon Harewood will be over the moon about that. Another one from Tom, Jordan Pickford and Doppelganger from Dudley. And this one from Rocky Toon, Justin Long from Die Hard and Tonali.
Yeah, see that.
Pretty good. And Jason, Glenn Durant and Robert Patrick, lookalike.
Ooh.
Pretty good. Another one, Hasty's lost another bet, says Ray. And a tattoo there. And you never see Brian May and Isaac Newton in the same room, do you? Says Stephen Kennedy.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, coming down to the last few. Guess I've had too much caffeine. I thought this lady was a muppet. Had that one before, but it never grows old. Top three. Steve McLaren and Donald Trump. Pretty good. Sometimes it's all in the angles, isn't it? Number two, Zelda and Maguire. From Rita. And well done, Rita. Well done, Rita. You've won this week. Michael Landon and Mark Hughes.
Oh, yeah.
I did like that one.
Yep.
I did like that one. Pretty good.
House on the prairie.
Keep them coming in. Send them to me, Mitch, or Steve, or George, or anybody from NUFC Matters, and we will endeavour to get them on the show.
Well done.
Thank you. Okay, before we push ahead with looking ahead to the game against Brentford, just want to talk about Sean Longstaff. Again, something from the press conference today. A lot of the journalists almost subliminally pushing the message towards our manager about Longstaff. He was a bit, I wouldn't say he was snappy today, Eddie, but the answers that he gave were shorter and they were more concise. The first few press conferences this year have gone on 34, 35 minutes on the videos that have been put out by the club. Today was 26 minutes, and I just got the feeling that Eddie wanted to get this over and done with. But yeah, there was a lot of questions about Sean Longstaff, and one particular journalist, I think it might have been Simon Bird. I will have to double check my notes, but somebody mentioned, hold on, yeah, it was Simon Bird from the Mirror. My mind didn't let us down. He mentioned that Longstaff was the one to miss out this year, and should we look out for potentially him being included because he's one of those 12 players that you've had worked with through the international break, with others being away. And he basically said, look, Sean wasn't left out. He hasn't been missed out. He was injured in pre-season. He wasn't moved out of the team. And now he's returned to full fitness. He's available for selection. So it wasn't a telling off for Simon Bird, but it was just the way that he answered the question. He's got a very, very clever way of getting his message across. And if he's not happy, you can still feel it. So Longstaff, clearly somebody who made a big difference last season. We did miss him when he was out of the team. He is one of those players that split opinions. Tonali came in, played alongside Joe Linton and Bruno in that first game, we're going to win the league. We're going to win the Champions League after the 5-1 win. Since then, we've lost 3 games. It's doom and gloom. Stockholm syndrome is back in full effect as far as Newcastle fans are concerned. We'll play Brentford tomorrow. Is Brentford the time to put Sean Longstaff back in the team, Steve, if Tonali is not 100%?
If Tonali's not 100%, I expect him to be back in the team, to be perfectly honest, Steve. I think it's a given. What I would say is that the Tonali Bruno combination that Eddie Howe talked about is like a work in progress. I think they're just familiarising themselves. They haven't been together that long. When Tonali arrived and then immediately went on holiday because he had been involved in the Euro 21s, under 21s, and then Bruno was away on international duty. Then they came back. They both had extended periods of holiday before we then went over to America. And then all of a sudden we're thrown in the first game of the season. And as you say, we all thought was going to be absolutely tremendous. But I think that what Sean does is he brings the best out of Bruno, but I think it's actually the other way around, where Bruno was bringing the best out of Sean. I think that sometimes you get a situation where 2 players just seem to click. They know where each other are going to be. They know who they can rely on to be behind them. You know, they know that if there's a rick in them or if they want to do something a little bit more flamboyant, that somebody's there to mop up if it doesn't go right. And I think that was what was working well with Sean Longstaff and Bruno at times. Maybe the problem will start to sort of come back and bite Eddie when it suddenly pins to him that he's going to have to change his formation. Maybe it's when it becomes a 4 in midfield rather than a 3-3 that he plays, or a 5-1. Maybe that's a change, and maybe he's in European games as he gets to grips with the way European football's played, like slightly slower pace, slightly clogged midfield. Maybe that's what that might be the opportunity. But Sean is undoubtedly for me one of the mainstays of the squad. I thought Eddie Howe started off the press conference in a quite buoyant and upbeat mood, but I think the fact that it only lasted 26 minutes tells you that he was being businesslike. He wasn't going to take anything from, he was expecting a little bit from some of the press, especially the written press, and he was prepared to just basically shut it down. I think it's probably the best way to put it. Whether that because he felt a bit prickly, or whether it's because he anticipated what he was going to be questioned on. But I think that I thought he started off in quite a buoyant fashion. When he walked in, and he was very much up for the conversation. But sometimes there's nothing wrong with one-word answers, or one-line answers to especially to the press, who are often there trying to catch him with a follow-up, depending on what he says. And sometimes what tends to happen with Eddie Howe is that sometimes he can say too much, and it ends up going into a bit of a rabbit hole, and it just gives more ammunition to some of the written press, especially when they try and pin him on some of the political stuff that he's been very, very good at batting off. I've expected someone to mention the European, the international break in terms of Saudi Arabia, but I think that's been washed over now that many times that it's not even sports washing; it's dishwashing.
Yeah, I mean, so many people try to get the Champions League in today, and he's just going, you know what he's going to say? 1 game at a time. I'm focused on Brentford. 1 game at a time. I'm focused on Brentford. I mean, it was pointless asking the question. Mitch, Longstaff. Time to bring the local lad back in now that he's fully fit and Tonali's got doubts.
If Tonali's a doubt and we want to keep him ready for Tuesday, I think Eddie can talk about 1 game at a time, but the selection for tomorrow will be a selection with who may be or may not be available on Tuesday in mind. So it inevitably comes together for me. And if there's a doubt over Tonali, of course Longstaff should go straight. Longstaff's being added to my list of players who seem to get better the longer they're out of the side. And I think his work when he is in the side goes underappreciated sometimes. I think I would have no qualms with him going in to face Brentford. I think, and if he's fit and he's ready, and again, Eddie is probably a bit naughty because I think some of the journalists do try to fish with questions to create a little bit of potential controversy when there's nothing to be there. You know, you've dropped him, or I haven't dropped him, he was fit. And so I think he's pushing back a little bit for people who want drama when there's no drama to be found. I think we're a relatively, or we seem to be a relatively drama-free squad now. And so, you know, if you want that, go fishing elsewhere. So maybe that's what's getting up Eddie's beak with that kind of line of questioning. You just don't know. But certainly the fact that the conference was shorter than usual says a lot. And maybe he's just created this air of business around the place. We've just got to get the job done. Let's get on with it. And that may be the message he's trying to get across within the press conference, but also that might be backing up what he's saying in the dressing room behind the scenes, you know.
Okay, just want to talk about this as well. Somebody brought it up in the chat, and two TV games now. Saturday the 4th of November, Arsenal at home, 5:30 kickoff live on Sky. And then, yes, you're reading that correctly. The following week, Bournemouth away, 5:30 kickoff on Sky. Tom Dixon said, do you think it's good at playing at 5:30 all the time for live television broadcast? I mean, the bottom line is we can't do a thing about it, Steve. But again, Arsenal fans will be disappointed because a 5:30 kickoff means they've got to come and either get a bus up here and get back in the stupid early time in the morning, or they miss out because they can't get a train home and they've got to stay and book a hotel. It becomes more of an expensive situation. And again, Newcastle United on the south coast at a time which makes it either difficult to get back or difficult to get there. 12:30, I think it was for Brighton, wasn't it? You know, like a ludicrous time that people had to get up to travel to go there. And you know, sometimes impossible to get trains that early in the morning. And now with the Bournemouth game, you know, Newcastle fans face the task of either having to get back from Brighton, which can be a 7-8 hour or, you know, 16 hour all round trip, or, you know, staying down in Bournemouth. I mean, I know some people can do that, people can afford it, but other people just can't. And changing it so, you know, so close to that period as well. It's coming up to Christmas. People will be struggling. It's just a bit awkward, isn't it? I mean, I know we've just got to get used to it, but just another kick in the nuts for Newcastle fans.
Yeah. I mean, that it's the way things are going. I suppose being in the Champions League as well means that we've got that added problem when we're playing on a Tuesday that, you know, we'll be looking for games to be either kicking off early on a Saturday, or if it has to be on a Saturday, you know, if it's previously been scheduled for a Sunday and gets moved back to a Saturday, then the TV see that as an opportunity to snap us up for a TV game and a 5:30 kickoff. I think it's one of those things. It's like, you know, we can complain and moan about it as much as like, but let's face it, it's the TV companies that are ruling the roost in terms of the fixtures now, the kickoff times as well. Maybe it's at this point that we should start to be looking, especially when, you know, everybody says that that sacrosanct 3 o'clock blackout that we have. You know, if ever a club would benefit from a 3 o'clock kickoff on TV on a Saturday, just to give us that little bit of opportunity to get home after a game, for example, it would be Newcastle United. You know, we have the furthest to travel of any club in the Premier League. And then to have South Coast games played at those ridiculous times of 5:30 or 12:30 kickoff, which makes it doubly difficult to get there and doubly difficult to get back. It's disappointing that, you know, from a TV perspective, what do you see as exciting about Newcastle at Bournemouth on a 5:30 kickoff? You know, the plus side is that we get the more games are on TV, the more money comes our way. But sometimes, you know, it shouldn't always be about money. But I'm afraid it is, and it's just one of those things that no matter how much we shout, we're not going to win the argument. No matter how much the FSA shout on a national level, They're not going to win the argument. No matter what the Premier League say and what the TV companies say in terms of how they organise themselves and how they organise these kickoffs, and no matter how they eulogise about speaking to fans and taking into account what the fans have to say, they don't really. They just run a coach and horses through it. It's lip service when they talk to fans, organisations, when they talk about supporters and they talk about dialogue and wanting the best. Total lip service. They're taking the mick, and they don't have fans' best interests at heart when it comes to that. If they did, they would be paying for the transport, the TV companies, because at the end of the day, the TV companies only want the games that are going to be full. They don't want stadiums that are half empty. So that's when it changes from the argument that fans don't put much into the game in terms of revenue, and it all comes from the TV companies. The TV companies get their revenue because of the atmosphere that fans create. Because then they get the more fans that are there, the better the atmosphere, the better the product, the more advertising revenue comes their way. So that's where they benefit. So perhaps now it's time for a different tack from supporters groups, and maybe they should be doing something that says there should be a fund set up within it that pays for fans, covers things like accommodation, covers things like inconvenience for not being able to get home, etc., etc. Maybe that's the way that the fan groups need to start attacking this one, Steve.
Yeah, kickoff time's always going to be a bone of contention, isn't it, Mitch? 5:30 seems to be Newcastle's new kickoff time.
Let's chuck a few things around and see what comes out. Let's start by saying, I've said this consistency on this platform and others for a long, long time. Television companies really just don't give a flying F about the fans. And I, somewhere in my email, still have an email from Football League that pretty much says that. When I was chair of the trust, and Steve helped me pen a letter to them when we were messing our kick-off times around during the promotion season, particularly the kick-off of Plymouth, that was Tuesday night, about 60 minutes. They basically said the television companies do what they want, you can't stop. That's pretty much what the reply said. That there's no reason for me to believe that that's changed, and there's no reason for me to think we even care for a minute, because they're still doing it consistently with us, with the Macans, with Brighton, with Southampton, Bournemouth, anybody who's got to go the length and breadth of the country. They really don't. If it suits them, then that's it. Some of it, though, as well, 5:30 for us. So you notice when we've been doing the podcast tonight, I'm in a hotel lobby in the Middle East, Friday night, and at the start of the podcast it was quite quiet, and now it's busy. It's getting busier. This is prime time in this part of the world. 5:30 kickoff is prime time in this region. 5:30 kickoff also means the lads in San Diego aren't watching the match with their breakfast, they're watching the match with their lunch. It's a better time for Peacock in the US as well. And all the data I've seen from Amazon that somebody shared with us about who watches what and where, apparently globally the best audiences are 5:30 on a Saturday kickoff. They're the ones that attract the best audience globally. And while we have owners in the Middle East who want to talk about attracting fan base around the world, it's very advantageous for us as a club to kick off at 5:30 on Saturday in terms of exposure. And that kind of suits us. And so I suspect as a club we'll play along with it because it suits the global exposure that we want and desire. And that's the double-edged sword of the ownership that we have as it stands, and how things will change and how we have to adapt as a fan base. For me, it just means there's a damn good chance of being out a lot longer watching the match and making it a messier evening than it needs to be, but never mind. it's a very interesting situation, and I'm not surprised to see us getting that last 5 kickoffs because, like I say, I think it really does suit. The other thing to look at as well is, do those extra hours really make a big difference when we're talking about being in European competition too? Klopp, if you listen to Jurgen Klopp, moving a game by 2 or 3 hours seems to be the end of the effing world.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, my God, the hamstrings might dissolve. But does it really make that much difference? Well, if it does make that much difference, is it giving us a little bit extra recovery time? Are we benefiting from those extra couple of hours? I just don't know. These things are always what you make of it. And it's your own truth from a certain point of view, isn't it? It's part of being popular. It's part of wanting to be the team that everybody wants to see. That's in the news all the time, is you're going to have your kickoff times moved around left, right and centre. It never did Man U any harm when they were winning titles left, right and centre either, and so it shouldn't be. It is a threat either, in my opinion.
There's another aspect to it as well, Steve, with the TV companies and the 5:30 kickoff, and that is that they do prefer the games to be played in the dark, under the floodlights. They feel as though they get a better atmosphere, psychologically a better atmosphere, and obviously, especially up in the northeast. I mean, come October, it's dark at 5:30. You know, so they're getting the best of both worlds, and it does come over on TV as a better package when it's a night game under the floodlights. Be interesting over the next week or so that it's maybe something that people, as the shows are going on, can give us a little bit of feedback on, because I'd be interested to know whether people feel as though the difference between a 3 o'clock and a 5:30 home game, which one they prefer, which one is the better, which one is the more convenient, or the more inconvenient. I don't think, from my personal point of view, 3 to 5:30 doesn't really make that much difference. But that's because I only live 10-minute drive into town on the bus, you know. But for other people, you know, and I know of friends of mine who live up in Northumberland, for example, sometimes it's more difficult on a Sunday for to get a train home than it is on a Saturday. And sometimes it's where the train's stopping, whether it's stopping at Alnmouth or whether he has to, you know, get off at Morpeth, or whether it's not stopping there and it's a Berwick and the wife has to drive up, or he has to drive there to leave the car to come back after the game. That type of question. And so there's a lot of inconvenience that other fans get that I don't. So I'd be interested to hear people's opinion on the 3 o'clock, 5:30 conundrum on a Saturday, Steve, at home.
Yeah, and Newcastle United, of course, kick off tomorrow, 5:30, live on Sky Sports against Brentford. So we'll finish off the show tonight with our pre-match preview and predictions, and we'll start with Toonstato.
Hello, lads and lasses. Another huge game this weekend before the Milan journey on Tuesday. Brentford at St. James's Park after 3 defeats in a row for Newcastle, so it's a huge game for us. We haven't lost 4 in a row since January 2021 under Steve Bruce, when actually we went on to lose 5 in a row before we beat Everton at Goodison. At the same time, we have won 7 out of the last 8 games against Brentford in all league games since 1992, scoring 24 in the process. Brentford, on the other hand, are a team in form. They have only 1 defeat in the Premier League in their last 11 games. That was 1-0 against Liverpool back in May. They're still unbeaten this season with 1 win and 3 draws. Actually, in all 3 of their draws, they took the lead, which makes them the team with most lost points from winning positions in the league. At the same time, they're without Ivan Toney, and since the start of last season, without him, they have played 9, won 5 and drawn 4. They don't have a single defeat, with Brian Mbeumo taking the leading role in the meantime. At the same time, Nick Pope has only one clean sheet in his last 15 games. That was back in May against Leicester in that famous game that secured qualification for the Champions League, and only 2 clean sheets in the last 22 games, while the stats of conceded shots per game are more or less similar. Maybe we have an issue in defense. Let's see what will happen on Sunday, and let's hope that this is the turning point in the season and we go on to another Champions League slot. Away the lads.
Thanks to Andre. Of course, he meant Saturday, not Sunday, just in case some of you are thinking, oh my God, I'm on the train up, and it's not Sunday. But yeah, he meant Saturday. Thanks to, as always, to Andre, and he is coming to the game as well. So I think he was in Barcelona then when he made that video. Referee, Craig Pawson, and of course, he had 4 Toon games last season. He had the 1-1 at home to Bournemouth, 0-0 at Man United, 0-0 at Palace, and the 5-1 win at West Ham. He does like to book Joe Linton. He's booked Joe Linton in 3 of those games last season. VAR, which is often switched off, is John Brooks. And of course, Ivan Toney is out, banned until next year, of course. And as for Newcastle's team news, well, we know that Willock and Kraft are both still out. Botman will return. There is optimism with regards to that. And Sandro Tonali as well should at least play some part. I would imagine he could be on the bench. We would say that it was probably Longstaff who would come in to replace him. And the big question is, who does he play at left back? If Botman's back in, is he going to put Byrne back in there, or is he going to bring in Lewis Hall? One would imagine if Botman's fit, he'd probably go with Byrne, especially with it being against Brentford. Listening to his press conference today. So, Steve, big game. We've spoken a lot about the players tonight, which was nice instead of talking about ticketing. So, I think we've more or less sorted out where we're at with the team. How do you see the game going tomorrow, mate?
I think it'll be an expansive game. I'm expecting them to carry on in the same vein as they played last weekend against Bournemouth, where it took them a last minute goal to pull it back, but by all accounts were really the dominating factor all the way through the second half. I think they've got pace to burn at times. I think that they can be physical, but they do tend to play on the break, very, very quick, very mobile. And I think it might suit us, because I think that as we saw last year when we went down to Bournemouth, to Brentford, that you can stretch them and you can take advantage. It took penalties last time, didn't it, from Ivan Toney, and some dodgy penalties at that, some dodgy penalty decisions. Let's hope we've got none of that tomorrow. The VAR guy who's assisting in the box was the VAR guy who didn't see that diabolical effort that was allowed by Ake when Akanji jumped over the ball. He didn't think that was right. So it just goes to show that those VR guys really are out of touch. I'm going to go for a penman. I'm going to go for 3-1. I think we'll get back to winning ways. I think it'll be a good game. You know what? 3-1. If Stewie wins some money on 3-1, just from me being on 3-1 alongside him, then that would be a bonus.
I'm going 2-1. I think it'll be tighter, but I do think Newcastle will win. I've got a feeling that Brentford are going to score early, and I think the crowd need to get behind the lads. That's the key. Not to let a goal going in against them get the crowd on a downer. It's important. The crowd have to play their part tomorrow. So I'm going 2-1. Mitch, I presume you haven't got the dice there.
I have.
Oh, you have.
Yeah, it was in me. Took in a pocket of me bags. That's fair enough. And if a penman comes in tomorrow, I'll probably have to take him watch shopping again. I took him watch shopping this afternoon.
Good stuff. What's the dice say then?
The dice says, it is 2-1.
Same as me. 2-1.
2-1. Then I'd take it. I'd just take any 3 points at the minute.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how they come. Yes, we've got the potential to hammer them. And I think they have players in their back line who have got mistakes in them. I think it was Pinnock last time. Scored an own goal and looked quite dangerous for his own team. And so, you know, we play the way we can and apply ourselves the way we can and put the press on. We know what we can do, and it's just letting it happen now, and just everybody being relaxed about it and not getting too uptight if we're not 1-0 up after 10 minutes. I think just go with the flow and let the game happen, and I think we do the right thing and we'll get 3 points. It's that simple.
Yeah, simple as that. Great show tonight. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Don't forget, Supermac and Gibbo have got a new home, pre-match and post-match. They will be at Louis Liquor Store. It is free to get in. I think that is just down in the Grove Market. Good luck to the guys there. Down there, pre-match pints down 3 to internet, 15th of September. So if you haven't met them or you want to meet them again, get yourself down to see Gibbo and Supermac at Louis Liquor Store at 3:30, and then they'll be there about 40 minutes after the game. But if you go and enjoy it, if you're watching on TV, make sure you shout a bit louder so the lads can hear you. Mitch and Steve, unfortunately, George couldn't be part of it tonight due to the technical problems with his internet. But everybody in the chat and all the moderators, thanks for a great job that you do. I'm back 10 o'clock in the morning for a pre-match look ahead to the game with Ben Jacobs. Looking forward to that. Take care, guys. Have a good weekend.
All the best. Have a good weekend.